Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for holding there. Sorry for the slight delay to the session this morning. We've had a few technical issues, but we will be able to continue there. So we are getting a set of slides ready for you as soon as possible as well. So there has been a quick question there just around getting a copy of the slides. We'll work on that and have those with you to download very shortly. So apologies for that. We just wanted to make sure that we could go ahead for you this morning. So my name's Jackie and I will be taking you through the VAT return today. This is part one of a two-part series, and this is going through steps 1 and 2, which is preparing your VAT return and reconciling with ease. Now this ties in very nicely to our second session, and you'll be able to find that later on this week. So that's VAT part 2, and we'll take you through the actual submission process, the VAT transfer journals, and also recording payment or receipt to or from HMRC or ROS. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly share the slides there again, make sure they're all sharing, because they do bear with me this morning, just last minute change. Okay, so we will very shortly have with you some slides, okay, so they will be accessible using the icon that looks like a document with a folded corner as soon as we can get them on there, and I will let you know as soon as I see them uploaded. Okay, it could be towards the end of the session, so please do just bear with us. You have been placed on mute, and that just means you won't be able to speak to us today. However, your questions are more than welcome. We've got Matt and Michael on hand for your questions, so you can use the questions panel and submit your questions across to us, and we'll try and cover those during the session if possible. We'll do some demonstrations where we can, but please do get your questions throughout the session. Don't feel you need to wait until the end there. Okay, so the contents. So first of all, just a quick introduction to the VAT return. Then we'll jump into a demonstration looking at part 1, which is preparing the VAT return and reconciling the VAT return. And along the way, we'll try and answer any of the questions that you may have, but also common queries that we have through our technical support lines as well for you. At the end, we'll show you where you can find further support. So on our help centre, there's lots of help and support available. We'll point you in the right direction there. Okay, I'm just going to check my polls have loaded this morning. Okay, they have indeed. So I'm just going to launch this quick poll first of all. And this is just to gauge from you, our customers, where you're doing your VAT return for. So are you doing a UK return? You might be doing a Republic of Ireland return. You might even find yourself in a position where you're actually doing both. So if you could just pop a quick answer across to us, it just helps us shape today's session for you. And just monitoring the poll there. Got a few votes just starting to come through, which is great. So I'll give you just a moment or two just to get your votes through there. Okay. So we've got about 75% of the votes in, but don't worry, we have got a mix. So I'm just going to close the poll there. If you didn't manage to vote, don't worry, that's not going to impact you at all. I'm just going to share that there. So the reason I'm going to share this is just to explain why we're going to use a UK return today. Okay, so most of our customers on these sessions do tend to do UK returns, but we do have a small portion of you doing a Republic of Ireland return, and we do have those that do both. Everything I'm going to go through today, though, can also lead itself to the Republic of Ireland return. Okay, so just because we're on a UK data set does not mean that this session isn't for you. Okay, we will highlight the differences along the way for you today, but that's why we always use a UK return. Okay, I'm just going to close that down and we'll go back to the slides there. There we are. Okay. Now, in your slides, when we upload it, there are links to email us if you're wanting some bespoke training. Okay, so if you do find that you want to know a little bit more about the software, get hands-on, want something that's more one-to-one and bespoke rather than a one-to-many webinar, then there is training available. So there is an email address you can use for a personalised quote there. And just to let you know, the handout is now available. So if you want to get yourself into that handout, you can do so now. Okay, so first of all, The VAT return wizard can be found in your VAT module, and as I mentioned, it's very similar in the UK and Ireland, but you will see some slightly different options along the top if you are in the Republic of Ireland. So you'll both have VAT returns, but in Ireland we have the VEES return, the RTD return, whereas in the UK we've got the VAT return, but we've also got EC sales and EU reverse charge. So you will be able to tell quite easily which country you've got that set up for. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just jump into my demonstration data now. So I'm just going to pull this company across here, and we're just going to look at the VAT return itself. So this is the VAT window, and as I mentioned, you've got different options along the top, so I can tell I'm in a UK return. And what I have here is effectively an audit trail of all of my previous VAT returns. Also, what I would have in here is if I've done EC sales lists in the past, they would sit in here. And if I've done any RTD returns, they would also sit in here too. So this is a list of all the submissions we're making to HMRC or ROS. So you can see there I've got the audit trail of my previous VAT returns, and what's great about those is I can double click into them, I can check my figures, I can use the drill down features, I can run reports. So that information is always there for me to come back to should I need to. What it also does is it keeps it like a checklist. So I've done the VAT return because it's showing in my list, but it also shows me whether or not it's been submitted, whether it's marked as paid, and whether the VAT is transferred. Now that's what we're going to cover tomorrow on our next session, part 2. Okay, so we're going to do our next VAT return. And as you can see from my long list there, I am doing quarterly submissions. So our software can support any submissions. So if you're doing a monthly submission, you would just pop your month dates in. If you're doing an annual submission, it can also support that too. The key thing is if you're doing a submission under Making Tax Digital rules, you need to make sure that your period that you select matches what your obligation period is with HMRC. Okay, so if they're expecting a quarterly return, you need to do a quarterly return in your software. Now, the reason I say that is in the past, when we did our Making Tax Digital one-to-ones, we found lots of customers who were doing 3 monthly returns, combining the figures manually, and then manually entering the figures for the 3-month period. So you can't do that anymore. It does need to match exactly what HMRC are expecting a return for. So in here, you can see my next return is actually going to be my January to March return. So that's what we're going to be doing next. Now, I'm going to show you, first of all, a very key place customers have gone wrong in the past. Calls to support. We would hate you to have to wait on the line just to try and resolve quite a simple one that we know is a call generator, and that is going into the VAT return and immediately picking up the previous return. And that is simply because I've got this one highlighted. Okay, so what we need to do for a blank VAT return is just go to clear and make sure none of my returns are highlighted. Once I've done that, if I go into VAT return, you can see I've now got a blank return. Okay, so it's ready for me to do in my next period. So we're going to look at step 1 first. That's preparing the VAT return. And the first thing you should do before you go any further is to take a backup. Okay, so it does prompt you on this window here to take a backup of your data. And that's because if you accidentally click on reconcile, which is on the next screen, we don't have an undo button. Okay, we can't undo a VAT return. So if you reconcile, that kind of sets everything in stone. So the only way to undo that is to go back to a backup. Now, hopefully that backup will be recent. It won't be something from months ago, like in my case from the end of February, because you would potentially lose everything you've processed since. So always make sure you take that backup, and it's always recommended to check the data as well. So when it prompts you if you want to check, we need to make sure there's no errors in there too. So I'm just going to quickly take this backup, and we say yes to check the data, and mine should fly through because it's a very small data set. Just finishing off there. And then once we've done that, we know that we can go into the VAT return, we can calculate, we can delve into the figures a little bit deeper. And if we accidentally click reconcile, we know we've got a point of return. So even if you're not going to reconcile the return and you just want to have a look at the figures, then please do still take that back up just to be on the safe side there. Okay, so no problems to report, which is great. So if you've got anything here in your errors, then that's the time to maybe take a deeper look into that. It means you've got damage to your data files. It means if you're submitting a VAT return, those figures could potentially be incorrect. So don't go any further with errors in your data there. Okay, backup has been successful. So the next thing we're going to look at is the date range. Now mine's automatically picked up January to March for me, which is great. A good check is just underneath it will say 3 months. Want to make sure that doesn't say 4 or any other date sort of date range there if you're just doing a quarterly return. So mine's automatically picked up my next quarter, but again what I just want to do is show you a couple of areas where we get quite a few questions. So first of all, we've got the option for a custom date range. So I can click into here and that allows me to just specify a from and to date. So you might want to use that feature. If I'm honest, the majority of the time we use the whole month feature. And just to give you an example of when we have recommended using this one, which is the date range, it wasn't even the most recent leap year, it was the leap year before that, where it didn't recognise the 29th of February. So it's a rare one, but you might want to use this for your own purposes of getting values for a particular period. So you might be looking at, just a 6-week period and you want to specify a date range, then that feature is there. But the majority of the time we use the whole month feature and just do from the start of one month to the end of your quarter or your year or your month. So you've got that good checkpoint underneath. And then we've got the option to include reconciled transactions. So again, this is where we get a few questions. Should I tick this box? Should I not tick this box? Why is this box here? So essentially, if I'm doing my January to March return, hopefully this is my first time of doing a January to March return. So if I do this for January to March, there shouldn't be anything reconciled for January to March. So really, I don't need to include reconciled because there shouldn't be anything reconciled. Where this gets used is where someone has forgotten to take the backup that I mentioned earlier and they've reconciled their transactions in error. So we tend to use this checkbox here when something's gone wrong. Okay. Now again, if you haven't reconciled previously and you tick the box, again, it's not going to cause you any issues. So don't panic if you have been ticking that. But by so our most common sort of suggestion is just leave that unticked and you only use it when directed by our support teams when something's gone wrong. And then we're going to move on to the last part of this section, and that's the VAT verification checks. I'm just going to uncheck that box and pop into these VAT verification checks. And these verification checks are here to just check over your data and highlight things that are maybe a bit of an anomaly. So it's not saying they're wrong, but it's saying just check this one before you submit to HMRC. It stands out as something that might be incorrect. And the power is still in your hands. You get to decide whether or not that transaction is included. So my recommendation would be, if you are new to Sage or you're new to doing the VAT return, would be to leave these switched on. It may mean that your checks take a little bit longer and your VAT return takes a little bit longer to calculate. That's no problem. It just means it's checking your data for those things that things look a little bit strange for your data. But as you go on, you might realise there are some of these that aren't really relevant to your business. And once you have established that, you can untick them so it doesn't carry out that search any longer. But for the purposes of today, I am going to leave those included. And okay. So at this point, I'm going to calculate, okay, and when it calculates, it's going to populate the boxes on the return. So in the UK, we have 9 boxes. In Ireland, you have 11 boxes. They are calculated slightly differently. They are labelled slightly differently, but the principle is the same. They are built using tax codes and transaction types, which I'll show you in a little bit more detail in a moment. So click and calculate doesn't set anything in stone. Once we've calculated, if we've missed something or forgotten something, we can always come out of the return and come back and calculate again. So this isn't a problematic area here. So I'm going to click on calculate, and again, bear in mind, it's going through all of your transactions, but it's also checking them for those verification checks. But what it's also doing is it's looking back in time prior to the date range I've specified to see if there's anything else sitting there unreconciled. So if you've got something that you've entered prior to January in this case, it's unreconciled and should be reconciled at this point, it will pull them through as earlier unreconciled transactions. And there are 2 main reasons why you would see something here. Okay, if there's anything else, might be something that needs a bit more investigation. The first one would be a late entry. Okay, so you've closed down the end of December, and then all of a sudden, after you've done your VAT return, an invoice lands on your desk that was dated for December. So you need to enter that, and you need to enter that with the correct dates. So that's what we call a late entry. And that's fine, you'll need to include that on the next VAT return. The second reason is what you can see there, and it's a correction. Okay, so if you've reconciled a transaction and then corrected it, you technically need to correct whatever you've submitted to HMRC or ROS. So in this case, this example here, I have a sales credit, and that sales credit is dated December. And the reason for that was this was an invoice. It was an invoice that was reconciled in December, and it's subsequently been deleted. Now, we can't just delete a reconciled transaction. It has to post a reversal. So that's what you can see there. So we need to include this transaction in our next return. If you find yourself with a long window full of lots and lots of transactions, you're probably going to need to do some work to sort of clear that out, and there may be different fixes for that. So that's probably something your accountant, or even our technical support teams might need to give some advice on. Unfortunately, we can't ignore some and include others. So if you've got a long list, that's where it becomes tricky, because you don't want to miss out your corrections, but there might be some that are not to be included. So that's where it gets a little bit tricky. So it's all or nothing when you select include or ignore. So for the purposes of this, I'm going to include, and it has now calculated my VAT return. So we're now on to step 2 here of the VAT return. So we need to be careful here not to click on reconcile until we are 100% happy with those figures. So this is the one that we need to avoid. And as you can see, it's highlighted in bold there, the reason why. So I'm going to actually start on this side, first of all. And this is the actual VAT return with the figures. Okay, now for some reason mine haven't pulled through, probably due to the technical difficulties we've had in pulling these through. But what I just want to show you is the drill down feature first of all. Okay, so drill down allows me to see exactly how that box is calculated. Now this is the same in the UK and Ireland. There may be some boxes that don't have the drill down on them, quite often because they are a result of a calculation from other boxes. For example, in the UK, box 3 is the sum of 1 and 2. Okay, so this is box 1, and this is showing me exactly what transaction types are impacting this box, and also what tax codes. So I've got tax codes there, and I've got some invoices, credits, receipts, and journal credits. Now, although we've got 0 in box 1, what you should be able to see is I do actually have some transactions impacting this return. So if I have a quick look into this one here, I've got a sales invoice or sales invoices on a T1. So let's just delve a bit deeper by double clicking. And when we double click into there, I can see at transactional level what's making that box. So I've got a couple of invoices with different values there. What I've also got, so although the box is zeros, I've actually got some credits as well. So if I just double click on that box there, into credits again, I can see exactly what's causing that value, and that's the correction there that we can see from December. So it's pulling through onto my VAT return. So this is a really good one if you're wondering what tax code do I use to impact my VAT return in box 1, for example. You can come in and you can have a look at the options for what tax codes impact that box. You just need to bear in mind that these tax codes will have other implications on other areas. It might be other boxes of the VAT return. And in particular in Ireland, they also impact your RTD return as well. So just be careful there. So our figures will calculate in here. And if we did decide that something was missing, for example, at this point, what we'd need to do is come out of the VAT return and go and enter it. Okay, so if I did think actually my box 1 should be a little bit higher than that, then I can come out of the VAT return, enter the transaction, and just start the calculation from scratch. So I'm going to leave mine as it is because I'm going to show you an adjustment in a second, which will help my VAT return out. But we've got verification results. Okay, so those checks that we got it to do, those 8 checks have come back with some things that thinks are a bit odd for us to have a quick look at. So I'm just going to go into view results. And in view results, I don't have anything that looks like a duplicate, which is good. But I do have some invoices or credits that haven't been updated to the ledger. So when we're talking about invoices and credits here, we're talking about invoices and credits on the invoices and credits module. Okay, not batch invoicing, not batch credits, invoices and credits module. So I can quickly view these and I can see what they are. So I've got 5 invoices and they're dating back to 2023. So I just need to decide, should they be impacting my VAT return? If they do, then I need to come out of the return and go back and calculate it once I've updated them. However, it may be that they are genuinely to be ignored. So these are much older invoices. This is where I've been trying out the invoicing module, decided not to commit to it just yet. So these aren't actual live invoices, they're actually dummy invoices. Now what I can just do for now is ignore them. But what you probably want to do after the VAT return is just go and remove them from the software so they don't flag up each time. And the same with purchase orders. We've got a purchase order that's been delivered but not invoiced. Okay, now again, this is quite an old one, so I might just want to delete that. But if that was quite recent and we hadn't yet received the invoice, we may want to chase that supplier just to see what's happening with the invoice there. So in this case, I'm going to ignore them. So you can ignore them even though they've got the little triangle next to them. But just bear in mind, you might want to clear those out so they don't come up each and every time. Now, one that normally always gets flagged is this one here. Sales and purchase transactions not using your most common tax code. So you can set up a most common tax code. By default, it's T1. But what will happen is the minute you use any other tax code, it will be highlighted for you. Now, most of the time, you don't post everything on a T1. Okay, you might have a couple of T0s here and there. You might be using T2s or T5s. And all it's doing is saying, check that is the right tax code. Okay, if you're happy it is, again, you can continue and ignore the message. But if it's the wrong tax code, it gives you the opportunity before you've reconciled to go back and amend the transaction before you go any further. So just bear that in mind. These can be ignored, but make corrections before you reconcile the return. Okay, the next thing I'm just going to talk about there is the adjustments feature. Now, adjustments can be made to your VAT return, but these are most commonly used when it's on the advice of your accountant the advice of HMRC or ROS, or you're on a specialist VAT scheme that requires adjustments to be posted. So they're not to be used because you've maybe forgotten to post an invoice, or you've missed a transaction, or you need to fix a transaction. Okay. To show you the adjustments though, you can go into Make Adjustments. Brings up a window a little bit like this one. And you can select which box you want to adjust. So for example, if you've got a letter from HMRC that says to adjust box 1, we can pop into adjustment there and pop in a reason. Sorry for my terrible spelling there. And tab along just to put the adjustment in. So I'm just going to put in £100 and save. As you can see, that's now meaning I have a value in box 1 there. It has an adjustment. Now, if it was a negative value, you can put your negative symbol in and add a negative value. So I'm going to close on there. And as you can see, as a result of that, my VAT return has now reflected that. So we've now got 100 in box 1. If we had a copy of that letter or that email from HMRC, we can add the attachment. So it means if someone's picking this up in a few years' time, everything's in one place. They've got all the reasoning in one place as to why you posted that adjustment 3 years ago to that VAT return. Okay, so the last bit I'm just going to cover there is the reports. Okay, and I'm not going to go into too much detail on this one because there are quite a few reports you need to run, and it will differ depending on what box you're reconciling and also what scheme you're on. However, we do have a session on running reports to reconcile your VAT return, which we have a recording of that you're more than welcome to join. But we do have a session coming in June for our VAT badge, and we'll be running that one live again. We do tend to get people to sort of join in and sort of join along with us and see if you can work out how things are working out. So it's quite an interactive session. But essentially, if you want to print your VAT return, we've got the option here, and we have a few different options. We've got the VAT return, we've got a summary, and the one we recommend you run for reconciling everything is the detailed return, and it gives you a list of everything, every single transaction, box by box, per tax code. It can be quite a lengthy report. So what I will say is maybe don't print that one straight away, maybe save it to file first. You can also print any earlier unreconciled transactions as well. So if you want to check out your earlier unreconciled transactions on a report, then you can do. You also have reconciliation reports. So as I mentioned, there's quite a few in here, but normally if you go into reconciliation reports here, you will have all of the reports for your VAT scheme. So I'm currently on standard, and within here, it has all the reports I could ever need for standard VAT. Now that would say different if you're doing VAT cash accounting. That would give a different set of reports for you there. Okay, so once we are 100% happy with our figures, that's when we click this option here. Okay, so if you've got any adjustments, any corrections to make at all, don't do this until you've entered those and recalculated and you're happy with the figures. I'm going to click on reconcile now because I'm completely happy with mine. And just get this message here about me making an adjustment, but I haven't popped in any documents. Do I want to do it now? So I could do. But I'm going to say no because you can attach them later too. And then we've got the option, do we want to flag them as reconciled? Well, yes, we do. Okay, we need to make sure those transactions are flagged so that they do not get picked up again as unreconciled transactions. So that takes us to step 3, and this is where our session tomorrow picks up. Okay, so if you want to know a bit more about these stages here, just broken it down to make it a little bit more digestible. Okay, so please do join us on that session. Okay, I'm going to jump onto the slides now. Bear with me, bring them back. So the handout shows you the differences. Okay, so UK, we've got the 9 boxes. slightly different in Ireland, and you can see that the labels there are different. Also, the VAT verification settings are very similar. The only area that differs is the VAT rates. So again, you can see those rates are slightly different to reflect that there's a different VAT rate in the Republic of Ireland. And again, reconciling the return, very similar. It's just that we've got those extra boxes for you to look at. And when we get to the last stage there, again, we're looking very similar. So all of the principles today, although we've shown you a UK data set, are the same in the Republic of Ireland. Okay, so now is your opportunity to get your questions across for us. It's been very quiet. It's been quiet for about a week now. I think it's the Easter break. I appreciate that. There's lots of people having sort of taking leave over this time of year. So I'm just going to very quickly bring up our upcoming webinars and also our help centre too. So just bear with me 1 second while I bring those across. Waiting for those to load. So please, if you've got any questions, get them across to the questions panel there. I'm just going to quickly show you our upcoming webinars. So there we go. So if you go to sage.co.uk/webinars, that will take you to this page here. We've got accounts and payroll, but we've also got some really exciting webinars coming up for HR and HR advice as well. So if you are looking for something beyond accounts and payroll, get yourself onto here. We've got a really interesting one next week on HR advice, which is all about redundancy and 2-pay. So probably, unfortunately, quite topical conversation at the moment with the changes in the national insurance rate. So if you do find that you're probably considering going through that, or you know someone who is, our HR advice sessions are all on here, and that will be next Tuesday. Before accounts, if we take a look at the live sessions there, we've got our other VAT session coming soon, but our main one is Copilot at the moment. Okay, so you've probably heard a lot about AI and Copilot. This is your opportunity to see that in action. So get yourself registered for that session. We've got sessions throughout the rest of this month and through May. Back by popular demand, we ran our management reports badge early this month, and we had a huge surge in requests for additional sessions because people had missed out. So we are rerunning that in the first week of May. But if I scroll down just a little bit further, I just want to show you when then those additional sessions are coming. So VAT Return Part 2 mentioned, that's on Thursday at 11 AM. So if you want to join us for the second part, then please do join us on that one. Okay, there's a quick question there about what report to use to reconcile VAT to revenue. So we get you to reconcile your figures by using a set of reports. Again, there's help available on our help centre, and we do have a recording which goes through what reports to run depending on what VAT scheme you're on. So the help centre is sage.co.uk/help. If you just go into your products, so we select Sage 50 accounts, we do have a section dedicated to manage VAT. And once you're in there, it will guide you through depending on where you are. Okay, so if you go into Republic of Ireland, in here, we've got a series of areas, so schemes, the VAT return itself, VAT settings. There's also video content and training on here as well. So once you've calculated the VAT return, you would then, in Republic of Ireland, you download a report that uploads straight to reconcile the revenue if you're in Republic of Ireland. So it's a file, an XML file that you download, and then you can upload onto the ROS or Revenue Online Service. Okay, so I think that's us on top of the questions there. Like I said, we've got lots and lots of webinars coming up. We are running our VAT badge again in June. Okay, so last year again we had lots of people attend our VAT series and earn their badge. So we're doing it again for 2025. So if you want to update your badge, then keep an eye out for our VAT badge coming soon. Okay, I think that's us almost done with the questions there. We'll hang on just for a few more moments, just in case there's any final questions popping over there. Just pop back to the slides for one moment. And I think we'll just pop on mute just in case there are any final questions there. And we'll be back with you just before we end. But if you are leaving us, thank you very much for joining today. Take care, and we'll see you on another session very soon. Okay, I think we'll look to end the session there. So thank you so much for joining us today. Take care, and we'll see you on another session really soon. But bye for now.